Ethan Walker had fixed hundreds of water tanks in his small town of Maplewood, but he never expected one to change his life forever. It was a chilly Thursday morning when his office phone buzzed with a desperate message. A woman named Mrs. Lillian Hart needed urgent help. She couldn't afford much, she said in a trembling voice, but her water tank had burst, flooding her tiny garden and leaving her without running water. Ethan, known around town for having more heart than sense, grabbed his worn-out tool kit and drove his battered pickup down the cracked roads to the address she gave. The house was almost invisible, hidden behind overgrown bushes and tangled vines, a sagging relic of better days. As Ethan knocked on the door, it creaked open to reveal a frail woman with silver hair pinned neatly back, her blue eyes clouded yet warm. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, embarrassment thick in her voice. "I don't have much to pay you, but I'll make you some tea." Ethan smiled and waved her off. "Let's worry about that later," he said, stepping into the backyard. The tank was a disaster, rusted through, leaking from a dozen places. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't the damage, it was the odd glint of metal poking from the ground behind it. Curiosity gnawed at him as he crouched to work, and as he shifted the tank, the earth gave way, revealing a rusted old lockbox. Lillian gasped when she saw it, clutching her chest. "I thought it was lost forever," she murmured, her voice breaking. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to open it, but Lillian gave a tiny nod. Together, they pried it open. Inside were letters, photographs, and an envelope thick with what looked like official documents. Hands trembling, Lillian pulled them out, her eyes widening with every page. "These are deeds. Property deeds," she said breathlessly. "My husband hid them before he passed. He was so afraid we'd lose everything if the bank found out he still had assets. But after he died, I couldn't find them. I thought the bank took everything." She turned to Ethan, tears slipping freely down her wrinkled cheeks. "I never knew. I still own half the town's old properties, the bookstore, the laundromat, even the little cafe." Ethan blinked, stunned. This woman, living alone in a crumbling house, scraping by on a meager pension, had unknowingly been a landowner all along. Lillian sagged against the porch, overwhelmed. Gently, Ethan helped her inside and made her that cup of tea she'd promised. They sat together in the faded kitchen, sunlight filtering through torn curtains, and talked for hours. Lillian told him stories of how she and her husband had dreamed of building a community, of making Maplewood a haven for families and small businesses. But after he passed and the paperwork disappeared, she gave up hope, shrinking into the shadows of her own life. Ethan listened, heartbreaking and swelling all at once. He knew he couldn't let her dream die again. Over the next few weeks, he rallied the townsfolk, carpenters, lawyers, even teenagers with spare time. They cleaned up her property, restored her home, and helped her reclaim her deeds legally. Word spread, and soon people began reopening the abandoned stores, reviving the sleepy town with laughter, music, and life. Lillian became something of a local legend, not a lonely old woman anymore, but the heart of Maplewood, a living reminder that hope could be buried but never destroyed. And Ethan, who had gone to fix a broken water tank, found himself fixing something much bigger, a broken spirit, a forgotten dream, and an entire town's future. On the day they officially renamed the town square Hart Plaza, in her honor, Lillian stood next to Ethan with a proud smile, holding his hand tightly. "You didn't just fix my water tank," she said, voice cracking with emotion. "You fixed my life." Ethan, humbled beyond words, simply nodded, feeling tears sting his own eyes. Sometimes, he realized, the greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels but the simple, stubborn acts of kindness that ripple outward in ways you can't imagine. As the crowd cheered and the sun dipped low, painting the sky in brilliant hues, Ethan knew one thing for certain: when you give kindness freely, the world has a beautiful way of giving it back tenfold. And in that tiny town, on that unforgettable day, humanity shined its brightest, not through grand gestures, but through one man who simply chose to help without expecting anything in return.